in our faith, things we go, man, you know what, I'm dealing with this, but I don't talk about it that much. And so throughout this semester, kind of in between series, we're going to do that. Have nights like this. We talk about difficult subjects because we all are actually dealing with many of these things. And so tonight, our topic we're actually going to be talking about is a question many of us have had. Is this, is God, why did you allow this to happen? Okay? God, or you phrase it this way, if I'm a good person, why did you let this thing happen? God, why do you let bad things happen to good people? Anybody ever had that question before? You kind of ask yourself that, like, in your own, like, quiet time with the Lord as you're going to bed, but you don't actually admit it to anybody else. So many of us have had that exact same question. And I thought tonight, rather than just me giving you my thoughts on it and going the passages I like to talk about, I want to bring Bekah up here because she's had to kind of deal with this in her own life in a very real way, had to process that question. And so glad you could be here with us tonight. I appreciate it. Tell us your story about the time, kind of a crisis in your life that, man, you had to process the exact same question, God, why? So lead us up to that moment where you're starting asking that question.
Okay, yes, I actually probably have a very unique point of view on this and a very unique story. So I'm just going to start from the beginning. It all started, I grew up in church. My dad's right there. He's Pastor Mike. And my mom works in the church too. Y'all have probably seen them around. And so I've always been in the church, but I never really realized how much of a significance God had in our lives till November of 2017. So that was my freshman year. I'm a junior now. And it was like a couple days before Thanksgiving, actually, and I started getting a cold, or so it seemed, and then everything just kind of got worse from there. I progressively got worse, lost my voice about I would say probably 3 weeks later, and then like 6 months later, I got really, really, really weak to where I couldn't shower, couldn't walk on my own. I did shower, but not on my own. But yeah, so I couldn't do all of that stuff, and it was really hard, and I had to stop going to school because it was hard to get through the day and be able to stay awake because I also was very fatigued and tired all the time to where I had to stop in the middle of the day to take a nap, which a bunch of us could probably relate to.
Right. It sounds lovely until you're like, you can't. So at that point, you couldn't speak, and you had probably even facial features.
Yes.
I remember that right?
Yes.
You couldn't actually control all facial features and things like that, and so no school at this point.
No school.
Okay, so you're having to leave school. Were you doing sports at the time?
Yes, I had just finished my cross country season, and I was going into track and going into, I think I was planning on playing basketball that year, but I don't know. So couldn't do that. Couldn't even walk. So I mean, probably was best. I didn't even try.
Right. So life went from normal, things are going normal right around Thanksgiving to by the time you get into the new year, cannot walk all the time, tired all the time, can't speak clearly. Life is completely different. You didn't really have that much of a warning about this. It kind of got there pretty quick. And so where were you at spiritually at that moment? Because you went to hospitals, remember this correctly, you didn't really have any answers on this, did you?
Mm-mm. So we went to lots of doctors, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. It was a lot of doctors, I lost count. But in like 3 of the big cities where all the best doctors are, and like I was one of the patients where they had, like, their minds were blank. They had no idea. And we tried everything, so many tests, so many, had to get my blood drawn so many times.
Right.
And so we we did that, and no answers, which was probably the hardest part, and that's what really tested my faith the most, was because I relied on God so much before that, but then I just kind of felt betrayed by God because I felt like I had done everything right, and I wasn't sure why it was happening to me.
Yeah. And I think that's something that so many people have had that exact same thought. Maybe it wasn't those circumstances, Maybe it wasn't, our own medical crisis. Maybe it was things are rough at home, or things you've had loss in your life, or even if it's even smaller things than that, just like this month or this semester has just gone extremely rough, and we have those questions, God, why? I've done so many good things. I've been obedient. I go to church a lot. Why did you allow this to happen? I think that's one of those questions that so many of us have had, but since we don't open up about it, we don't learn how to actually process through it. We show up and go to a small group and how are you doing? I'm fine. Well, I'm not at all. We do that a lot. So you didn't have any answers in that. It was looking really difficult. What happened from there? They eventually started doing some diagnosis, but that wasn't actually true, so keep on going.
Yes, so I went to one final doctor, and they had a diagnosis lined up, and literally we were checking off every checkbox. I had every kind of symptom and matched perfectly. And so we had that lined up, and there was one test that I was going to do that was a for sure, that's what you have, and then we would start treatment, and then it would get, from we understood, it would get much better from there. And so we did the test, and it came back negative. So at that point, that had been a rock bottom point for me, because I felt with that diagnosis, I was on cloud 9. Yeah. And then just ground zero after that. And
it wasn't even a great diagnosis. It was a crippling disorder that you'd have to deal with the rest of your life. But it was just an answer. Mm-hmm. Am I remembering that right?
Yes.
That's a bad spot when this is bad news, but it's still news, so it's good news. That's rough. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a low point, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was one of those diagnoses where you don't get better. You had that for the rest of your life, and you don't get better. Which at that time it seemed okay. It didn't seem bad, and it was a terrible. It was. Now that I think about it, I wouldn't be able to go to school. I would probably be in the hospital a lot more, a lot more doctor's appointments, going back and forth to get the special medicine, and so we got the negative diagnosis, or the negative test result, and that was really rough. I kind of just left my faith altogether at that point, because I was okay, these doctors aren't helping, God's not helping, I'm just gonna see what happens if I can do it on my own. And that didn't work, of course. So then I started trying to dip my foot back in the water, try and test out faith again and see where everything, try again and restart. So I tried that, and everything slowly started to get better. And
what did that look like? So you went from this time where, all right, there's a really dark time, and this isn't a very hopeful time just in diagnosis side of things, and you started trying out faith again, kind of seeking God, I would say, in a way. What did that look like? Because I think that's really important, because when we get to that point where we're in crisis and we hit that rock bottom, I think a lot of times we don't know how to seek God very directly. And so give us real practically, what did that look like, seeking God all over again and saying, you know what, I don't have answers, God, but I need you in this. So what did that look like exactly?
So I would like to say that it started off I ran back in God's arms, and it was this whole great story, but it wasn't. Like I said, I was very hesitant about going back to it, because God didn't help me before, so why would he help me now? So I tried again, and that was a little bit, I had the daily Bible verse on my phone, and so I was reading that every day and praying, and just a little bit though, not a lot. I started praying, and I started to see a difference, and that was when I started to see that God is bigger than anything that we could ever deal with, and bigger than the thing I was facing in that time. And I like to think of myself as a positive person. Right. And I'm known at school as a girl, or it was before that, I was known as a girl who's always smiling, and you can see me in the hallway, walk past, and I'm always going to have a smile on my face. And I physically couldn't smile. The whole right side of my body was weak. And I couldn't open my eye. I couldn't talk. My voice was gone. So that was very hard too, because it was like hard to be positive, because this big thing was happening in my life and it seemed like it was taking everything away. Yeah.
I think it's so big because, like, a lot of times we're in that darkest moment. It's a lot of times like where you were at for a while was, God, why did you do this? And we end up doing this. We end up pushing God away and like distancing ourselves from him, almost like the story of Job in the middle section of it. We kind of push God away, saying, God, why did you do this? The problem is that's when we need him the most, you know? And so it got darker and darker until you sought him out, and it started being hope. Not necessarily, and everything just instantly got better. Like, this isn't a story of just, okay, I sought God out and he instantly fixed everything, although getting there in a little bit, but he gave you hope. You know, I think as a key thing is a lot of times we're seeking God, saying, God, just take all this away. You know, give me a yes response on my prayer. Like, that's what we oftentimes want. Give me a yes response to my prayer. That's what I need. But with you, it was, give me some hope. Give me some trust in you, you know, that you sought out. And that's big. I like how you're honest. Like, it was baby steps, right? Like, if that's some of you guys in here, I want you to encourage that, man. If you're in that spot where you're saying, why, God, why? And you kind of distance yourself from God, maybe tonight you're not to take that first baby step back towards him, you know? And you're just going to wake up tomorrow and be like, I'm fine now. But that baby step back towards him is so big, okay? And so keep on going with your story, though.
Yes, so just a little bit of a side note. That happened that year happened to be my brother's senior year, and my sister's kind of a big year in her life too. And I was going through all of this, and I felt like I was taking my parents away from them too. And so I felt almost guilty in a way that my brother was going through all of the big steps like graduation, and he was the lead in a play that year, and I felt like I was taking my parents away from the attention that should have been given to them. And
it's like a spiritual warfare sense. Like, there's this, the enemy kind of heaps on guilt on top of the crisis already. Like, that's how he works.
And I couldn't do anything about it. Like, believe me, I tried my best. I went to physical therapy 3 times a week, speech therapy 3 times a week. I went to counseling for a possible anxiety, which is true. And so I was doing everything on my part that I could, and I still felt like nothing was happening until that moment when I started to ease back into my faith and get my relationship with God back in where it used to be.
Yeah. So what's happened since then? Obviously, you walked up here and you're speaking to all of us. And so after you kind of said, God, I'm trusting you in this and walking with him, later on, things actually started getting better. Now, I want to be clear. It's not like we're not up here saying, hey, you know, if you're going through a crisis, just turn back to God. He'll fix everything. That's not what we're saying. He'll give you a hope. He'll give you assurance, and he'll walk with you and never leave you, never forsake you, all those things. But in your case, though, you did start seeing these radical changes. And so walk us through that.
Yes, so luckily those changes were physical. Like, I could physically feel more strength coming back in me. Like, I was to a point where I couldn't walk, but I was starting to get back. Like with my faith again, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm all better.
Yeah.
It was more like it's all coming back slowly, but it was getting back, which is the important thing. And I started to see the change and started to feel it, and I was just going right back to God, and like I realized that it was all him, and it was like nothing I was doing, because I was doing that the whole time.
Right.
And so it was all God, and it was all God's power working in me and working through all of the people that I was working with, my physical therapist and speech therapist and counselor, and my parents too were my biggest support system through everything. And I so started to see a change. And then one time we were at Cheesecake Factory, and you know they have
America.
they have like mirrors around the table. Well, we looked, and I looked at my dad, and I was talking to him, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, your eye's open." And my eye had popped open, and we weren't expecting that, because everything had been so slow before that. We weren't expecting such a big change. And that was right before we went on family vacation, so we were all like on a high the whole time. We were like, everything's gonna get better. My voice was still gone, but everything was starting to get better.
Moral of the story, miracles happen in the Cheesecake Factory.
Oh, yes.
Some total of the story, go to small group. No.
Let's go to Cheesecake Factory.
Go to Cheesecake Factory. We need one in Victoria. There we go. All right, petition. Now, there is something also, so all this is happening. I think there's two things that we were talking about before that really also stuck out to me. So seek God through this and seek God in boldness and all those things, and don't push God away is a big story of yours. But also, your friend group and support system went through some change in here. Like through this dark time in your life, it changed a little bit. Walk us through that. What did you learn? Things like that.
So unfortunately, the friend group that I had kind of fell off, kind of drifted away, and they didn't really even want to talk to me at school at all, which really hurt because I was like going through such a hard time, and I figured, my friends will be there to support me and they'll be here to carry my backpack because I can't walk by myself. And that didn't end up being the case, which was kind of a big shock to me. So that happened, and as I started to get better though, I saw a whole new group of people step up to care for me and send me cards and actually reach out, which they've never really talked to me before that. Actually, they weren't very nice to me before that. So it just kind of taught me that like sometimes that those things that we have to go through, they're going to bring around a whole different group of people in our lives, and to strengthen
it's deeper,
us.
It's so big. Like when you go through those times, those are the people who are there for you and support you. And sometimes people just don't know what to say, but still there's an attempt, there's a trying. It shows a lot. And so twofold, A, be that person, but also, A, be that person, but B, the person who is there for you, value that friendship. Not just the people who are the most fun, not just people that are easy to hang out, but those that they care there, That may not be a big group, but that's a group that matters, that cares. And so that's awesome. Now, last but not least, you talked about, and this is a big part about going through crisis, we get asked God, why did this happen? This is useless. Nothing good can come out of this. You came out with amazing testimony on the other side of it, but also it changed the way you view serving and ministry and kind of purpose in life. And so talk about that a little bit before we close out.
Yes, so after that, I started to grow even more and started to, I was serving every Sunday before that, but I never really saw, again, the significance of it and such a big impact that I had on other people's lives and the impact they had on my life. And I started to serve more, started to get more involved, and I actually discovered a career path that I wanted to go into, which is physical therapy. And without that experience and having to do physical therapy, it's not fun, but having to do it, I realized that it is something that I think God is calling me to do later on.
It's like people in that moment feel helpless, they feel hurt, and it's a ministry. And you say, well, that's not like pastoral ministry, but no, it's ministry. It's what you do in seeking out and sharing the love of Christ throughout your life as ministry. And so I bring that up because here's what I want you to think about. If you're going through a crisis right now, you're going through an extremely difficult time right now, is a lot of times you actually find your ministry through that. You find that, okay, I'm going through this dark time, and then you meet another person and they're going through the exact same thing. You have a unique power in that moment to go, hey, follow me. I've been through this. I hear you. I don't just sympathize with you and say, man, that's rough. I've been there and done that. Here, follow me. I can help you in this, Like if you went through somebody going through medical crisis, they're not getting answers, you can speak into their life in a unique way that I can't. I can still point into scripture and say, I'll pray for you, but you've been there, and there's a certain specialness about being there. My question for you guys, you can talk about this in a small group, is what are the things in your life that maybe they were difficult? You can say, you know what, out of that, I have a unique ministry. What are the things you can say, I've been there. I can help you with that, because we are all in here set to do ministry. It's not just us, me, or small group leaders. We are called to do ministry as a people of God. And we find that sometimes in hurt and troubled times and difficulties and things like that. And so Before we close out here and head off to small group, is there any one last piece of advice you would give to someone in here who's going through that crisis? Or maybe they will start tomorrow, and what would be your advice to them before we close on out here?
I just suggest to not focus on the stuff that's going wrong in your life, but focus on the stuff that's going right. Like through that whole process and through that whole experience, I realized that my family and I grew closer together than ever. You would realize it's surprising when you're stuck in a hospital room all together that you're going to grow closer together. So that was a plus. And like I said, I found a new friend group and everything, and found a career path. Really, everything has gone right.
Yep.
And it makes it harder to find the negative once you've gone through something like that. And once you get on the other side of it, it makes it like you see things in a whole different way.
Yeah. I made a B on an exam. Oh, my life is over. Like, that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, amen. So, first of all, thank you so much. There we go. Thank you so much.